watch a video, and it's not too hard to do. There's some tools out there that are on the free internet that allow you to do that. Certainly in the medical environment, we need it for the HIPAA compliance to make sure people don't look at other people's records. Certainly in financials, people are very important about security. This isn't quite secure enough to meet the military needs in most cases. They still go with the KIV or KG encryption devices. We have the ability to connect those to the RMX using an external device, a high-speed serial interface device. If you have an interest in that, please contact your Polycom sales representative or reseller, and they can get you more information on that product. That product is a little unique, and so you do need to communicate with them what your requirements and what your needs will be. Okay, we do have a feature called lost packet recovery, where we try to make up for lost packets, and here in a slide or so we'll talk about that. IVR, you heard the woman's voice saying welcome to Polycom and key in your number. That's an IVR. That's an interactive voice response. That allows us to query the user who's dialing in and to ask them to key in certain things. Now that IVR comes in English, but it's possible to re-record it in virtually any language. And there are tools inside Polycom, inside the RMX, that allows you to select which language you want to listen to during the call or into the call. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay? We also have the ability to do recordings of calls. That recording can be started immediately, or it can be started on demand using our RSS 4000 recording and streaming server. We don't really get into that product here in this video, but there are videos that can talk to you about it. It's a nice enterprise recording capability that sits back in the wiring closet or in the server room, and is able to do up to 15 simultaneous recordings if you need it at up to HD speeds or HD qualities. We fully support and are integrated with our CMA scheduling tool and our DMA tool. The DMA tool or appliance is actually a appliance application that sits above multiple RMXs and allows it to monitor the status of the RMXs and distribute calls amongst them so that there isn't anything overburdening one of the RMX bridges. It's able to actually distribute those calls across multiple bridges and potentially cascade two bridges together to take on an even larger call. That's part of DMA. DMA, again, we're not getting really into it in this video, but there is a video available to you that would talk about DMA in a little more detail. We also work fully with our immersive telepresence products, our RPX and our OTX rooms. Very important piece for us. The large, very formal, very nice video conferencing rooms that people have. Oftentimes these rooms have anywhere from 2 to 4 codecs built into them and up to 4 screens. And oftentimes we have to select and move the videos around depending on what screen they're on. And we use the RMX to help us do that. Last but not least is a TIP protocol, and that is the telepresence protocol that Cisco developed a few years ago and then put out into the public, and that allows us to fully collaborate and fully connect to a Cisco telepresence system. And that's very important because there are a lot of other manufacturers, including Cisco's, telepresence rooms out there that we need to be able to connect to. And now with this TIP capability, we can directly connect to them from our bridge. Lost packet recovery, I mentioned it, gives us the ability that if there's a bad packet or if we lose a packet that's coming to us on a bridge call, we're able to kind of clean it up. As you can see there on the left side, with 5% packet loss, the video is really very good. It's really hard to recognize. The video on the right is another vendor who can't handle the 5% packet loss, and you see a bunch of little squares. Those little squares are called macro blocks. And that's how we do our compressed video, is using a macro block. And those macro blocks, if we lose a packet, we could lose quite a few macro blocks. There's some technical terms, I won't jump in there, but we could lose a slice. And if we do, then we have to kind of cover it up. And that's what you're seeing on the left side. We've actually tried to estimate what was going to be there and put it in there as closely as we can using lost packet recovery. We have a similar capability in audio, and it is a phenomenal audio algorithm, and it works between Polycom and Polycom products. And that audio algorithm is phenomenal. It can handle 50% packet loss or more and maintain high quality audio. It's a very interesting demonstration if you ever get a chance to watch it. We also have the ability on the bridge to be talking to the endpoints and say, Mr. Endpoint, can you improve your video quality? Can you move up from CIF resolution to maybe standard definition? If you can, then I can make it better on the screen for everybody else. The end users don't do anything to negotiate this. This is something that our bridge and the endpoint try to negotiate between themselves based on the resolution of the call, the type of hardware, and the bandwidth that's available to them. If they're limited by bandwidth, they may not be able to up the resolution. But if they can, they're going to scale it up, they're going to sharpen the video and give it a better video for everybody involved. Automatic feature, you can disable it should you desire. It's in the profile area if you want to disable it. I typically run it on every call just because it might help out, and it does. When you see mixed environment calls, mixed HD with standard definition and with CIF resolution all in the same call, you'd be surprised how much cleaner the video can be then. We use the H.264 standard on the HDX for its primary method of communication. And for years, everybody has been using something called the baseline standard. That baseline has specific requirements of bandwidth. Here you can see on a CIF call, it can take about 384K for a 30 frames per second call. Standard definition takes about 512. HD at 720p 30 will take about a megabyte, and 1080p 30 for us takes about 2 megabytes to get a call started. Well, a few years ago, we took on part of the ITU standard, the 264 standard, and decided to adopt something called high profile. That's one of the standards available in the H.264 standard. And it has much higher quality video at the same rate. Yes. Oftentimes we're able to reduce our bandwidth by up to 50% while maintaining the same quality business video call. Now, I'm very careful in how I say that. Typical business video call is going to have 3, 4, 5 people sitting around a table talking and chatting back and forth, and in that environment, in that kind of business environment, high profile does a magnificent job of handling the video at up to half the bandwidth. Now, it's not just for lowering the bandwidth. Let's say we're going to run a 2 meg call and we're going to do it using high profile. It means we have a quality that looks very much like a 3 meg or a 3.5 meg call, okay, and we're still only using 2 meg. Now, as you can see on that chart, at 128K call, we'll do 4 CIF or standard definition and 30 frames. Now, before I could only do a CIF call at 30 frames. And here we can see that a 720p 30 HD call, I'm now able to do at 512 or half a meg. Many of our competitors have said this doesn't work, but I will tell you honestly, and I've taught a lot of classes, had a lot of resellers, they all tell me how good this is. And I'm not fibbing on this one. And those of you who have been in my classes know that I tend to tell the truth on it. And this has been a very, very good enhancement for Polycom and, of course, for the customers themselves. If I want to do a 720p 60 call, I need 832. If I want to do a 1080, I start at a meg. Now, I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to work on a call with our president, Andy Miller, and with the CEO of DreamWorks, Mr. Jeffrey Katzenberg. And we did the call between our Team Polycom event and Mr. Katzenberg's home in California. Team Polycom was being done in Orlando. He actually dialed out through the public internet and came into us through our Denver Colo location, and then wrote an MPLS network to us. It was a 2 megabyte call from his home. And when I got done with the call, I had several of my peers, the SEs in Polycom, coming to me saying, "What speed was that call?" And of course, I turned it around on him and said, "Well, what speed did you think it was?" "Oh, it had to be at least 4 meg. Well, in reality, it was 2 meg. And it was standard HDX 8006 on Orlando's side, and it happened to be a 9006 on Mr. Katzenberg's side. The interaction was unbelievable. The delay between each site. Andy and Mr. Katzenberg were able to interact with no overlap, with no stepping on each other's toes. It was phenomenal. High Profile did a beautiful job, and if you ever get a chance to see the video of that, you can see how their interaction was. It's very good. I'm very big on High Profile, as you've probably figured out, and I think it's very, very good. Now, we're not the only ones to do High Profile. Other vendors have done High Profile. Now, at this point in time, we do not interoperate with them, but both Sony and Cisco have adopted High Profile, so there must be something good about it. Okay, let's look at these 3 resolutions of high definition that I've just talked about. I've got the 720p30 there on the left. That's your standard television high definition. Okay, good looking video, and I like it. Starts at 512, but to me the sweet spot is that 720p60. That 720p60 starts at a little higher bandwidth, about 832, and goes up. And in fact, on that call with Mr. Katzenberg, that is what I used and set up on our call. It was a 720p60 call. Now, I don't know how big a screens you all work with, but my screen at this Team Polycom event was 121 feet wide. So quality meant everything, and people actually thought it was a production call using satellite links. It was really, anyway, it was very, very good. We used 720p60, made it so natural. Everything was very clean. There were no jaggies on the screen, and a screen that big, the jaggies show up pretty badly. So we saw nothing like that. So I really love the 720p60. 1080p30 is certainly an excellent resolution. It does require more bandwidth. Basically a 720p30 call and a 1080p30 call. The 1080p takes twice as much bandwidth as the 720p30. So just be aware of that. The 1080p call takes twice as much bandwidth as the 720p30 call. So just be aware of that, and make sure you have plenty of bandwidth to run it. Anyway, 1080p is not for everybody. There are places that certainly need 1080p. Medical. If I got somebody looking at my MRI, I want them looking at 1080p30. Military, oftentimes they need the high resolution and the high quality that the 1080p brings. But certain other areas, education, possibly attorneys, may not require things like 1080p, the higher resolution. Financials probably wouldn't require it in most cases. Certainly there are exceptions to all rules. But for me, that one right there in the middle, that 720p60, that's the way to go. Okay? We work everything on the RMX bridge through meeting rooms. Meeting room is an area that we set up that allow people to come together in a meeting or in a conference. Those meeting rooms use a profile to define what the meeting room is going to look like. Let's go through a couple slides and I'll show you what that's all involved. So what do I need to have for a conference? I've got to have time. Okay? Well, I need to either schedule the conference or make it an ad hoc conference. Well, if I'm going to schedule the conference, I'm going to use CMA, our scheduling tool, or possibly the RMX scheduler that's built into the RMX itself. I won't use both. I'll use one or the other. Now, CMA gives me some provisioning capabilities that could be very important to the client. So it just depends on